I was kneeling in my garden, soil cool beneath my knees, when I felt eyes on me. The afternoon sun warmed my bare shoulders as I tended to the roses, my thin sundress clinging to my skin. When I glanced up, a man stood at my neighbor's fence, watching me with an intensity that made my breath catch. He wasn't hiding it, just leaning against the gate, arms crossed, a slow smile spreading across his face when our eyes met. Something about the way he looked at me, like he was already imagining what came next, sent heat rushing through me. I should have looked away, gone inside, but instead I arched my back slightly, letting him see the curve of my silhouette against the light. His smile deepened. That's when I knew this afternoon was about to become something else entirely. If you're enjoying this already, hit that like button and subscribe. You won't want to miss what happens next. I stayed on my knees longer than necessary, pulling weeds with deliberate slowness, hyper-aware of his gaze tracing every movement. The fabric of my dress had ridden up slightly, and I made no effort to adjust it. When I finally stood, brushing dirt from my hands, he was still there. "Beautiful garden," he called out, his voice carrying easily across the small space between our yards. I walked closer to the fence, noting how his eyes followed the sway of my hips. "Thank you. I spend a lot of time making it just right." "I can tell." His gaze lingered on my face, then dropped lower, appreciating the way my dress hugged my curves. "I'm Luca, by the way, staying with Dave next door for a few days. Caroline." I leaned against the fence post, close enough to catch the warm scent of his cologne. "Visiting from far away?" "Portland, but I'm thinking Columbus has more to offer than I expected." The way he said it, looking directly at me, left no doubt about his meaning. Heat pooled low in my stomach. This stranger, this gorgeous man who'd been watching me work in my garden like I was putting on a private show, there was something dangerously appealing about the directness in his eyes. "The city has its hidden treasures," I said, my voice softer now, more intimate. He stepped closer to the fence, close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. "Any chance you'd be willing to show me around?" I bit my lower lip, considering. Dave wasn't home, wouldn't be for hours. And something about this man, this moment, the way he looked at me like I was the most fascinating thing he'd encountered, made every reasonable thought scatter. "I suppose I could give you a tour," I said, my fingers trailing along the fence rail. "Starting with my garden." "I'd like that very much." I walked to the gate that connected our yards, my heart hammering, as I lifted the latch. The small click seemed to echo with possibility. When he stepped through, the space between us felt charged, electric. "These are heritage roses," I said, leading him deeper into the garden, though we both knew this wasn't really about flowers. "They need special attention." "I can see that." His voice was closer now, right behind me. "You have gentle hands." I turned to face him, and the intensity in his expression made my breath catch. We were standing among the roses, the late afternoon light filtering through the leaves, casting dappled shadows across his features. He was even more handsome up close, sharp jawline, full lips, the kind of presence that made every nerve ending come alive. "Would you like to see inside?" The words left my lips before I could stop them. "I have some wine." His smile was slow, knowing. "Lead the way." My kitchen felt smaller with him in it, his presence filling the space as I poured wine with trembling fingers. When I handed him the glass, our fingers brushed, and the simple contact sent electricity shooting up my arm. "So what do you do in Portland?" I asked, though my mind was far from casual conversation. "I travel, write about places, people, experiences." His eyes never left mine, always looking for something that stops me in my tracks. "Find that often?" "Not until today." The wine glass trembled slightly in my hand. This was happening fast, but something about the way he looked at me, like he saw exactly who I was beneath the surface, made me want to throw caution aside. "Caroline," he said, setting his glass down and stepping closer. "I hope I'm not misreading this, but..." I silenced him by pressing my lips to his. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, then deeper as his arms came around me, pulling me against him. He tasted like wine and possibilities, and when his tongue brushed against mine, a soft moan escaped me. His hands found my waist, fingers skimming the thin fabric of my dress. "You're incredible," he murmured against my lips. I could feel his desire pressing against me, could feel my own body responding with an urgency that surprised me. My hands roamed over his chest, feeling the solid warmth of him through his shirt. "Bedroom," I whispered, and he didn't need to be asked twice. We barely made it up the stairs, stopping twice to press against the wall, his mouth hot on my neck, my fingers working at the buttons of his shirt. By the time we reached my room, we were both breathing hard, the air thick with wanting. He turned me gently so my back was to him, his fingers finding the zipper of my dress. The sound seemed impossibly loud in the quiet room as he drew it down, slowly, his knuckles brushing my spine. The dress pooled at my feet, and I heard his sharp intake of breath. Beautiful, he whispered, his hands skimming over my bare shoulders. I turned in his arms, suddenly bold, reaching for his belt. His shirt was already hanging open, revealing the lean lines of his torso. When I pushed it off his shoulders, he caught my hands, bringing them to his lips to press soft kisses to my palms. The gesture was so tender, so intimate, that it made my chest tight with emotion. This wasn't just desire. There was something deeper here, a connection that went beyond the physical attraction humming between us. He guided me toward the bed, his movements careful, reverent. When I sat on the edge, he knelt before me, his hands resting on my thighs as he looked up at me with such intensity that I felt exposed in the best possible way. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, his thumbs tracing small circles on my skin. Instead of answering with words, I reached for him, pulling him up to join me on the bed. Our bodies came together with perfect synchronicity, skin against skin, warmth meeting warmth. His lips found mine again, deeper this time, more demanding. I arched beneath him as his mouth trailed lower, pressing kisses along my collarbone, down to the sensitive spot where my neck met my shoulder. Every touch sent waves of sensation through me, building something hot and insistent in my core. His hands were everywhere, tangling in my hair, tracing the curve of my waist, skimming over sensitized skin until I was trembling with need. When he paused to look at me, his eyes dark with desire, I felt beautiful, wanted, alive in a way I hadn't in months. "Please," I whispered, and he understood. He moved with careful precision, his body joining with mine in a rhythm that felt both new and familiar, like we'd been waiting for this moment without knowing it. The connection was immediate, overwhelming, not just physical but emotional, spiritual, something that reached deeper than desire. I wrapped my legs around him, pulling him closer, deeper, meeting every movement with my own. The sounds we made filled the room, soft gasps, whispered names, the quiet music of two people completely lost in each other. He shifted the angle slightly, and suddenly stars exploded behind my eyelids. My back arched as pleasure coursed through me, building higher and higher until I was sure I couldn't take any more. "That's it," he murmured against my ear, his voice rough with his own need. "Let go for me," and I did. The release crashed over me in waves, my body trembling as I cried out his name. He followed moments later, his own release shuddering through, him as he buried his face in my neck. We lay tangled together afterward, skin damp, hearts gradually slowing. His fingers traced lazy patterns on my back as I rested my head on his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his breathing. "That was..." I started, then trailed off, not sure how to finish. "Unexpected," he supplied, and I could hear the smile in his voice. "Good unexpected or concerning unexpected?" He tilted my chin up so I could see his face. "The best kind of unexpected." As the sun set outside my window, casting golden light across the rumpled sheets, I wondered what I'd gotten myself into. But when he kissed me again, soft and sweet and full of promise, I decided I didn't care about the complications. Some moments were worth the risk. The next morning arrived too soon, sunlight streaming through my bedroom windows. I woke to find Luca already awake beside me, propped up on one elbow, watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Morning," I said, suddenly aware of how my hair must look, how vulnerable I felt in the bright light of day. "Good morning, beautiful." His smile was warm, genuine, erasing some of my morning after anxiety. I stretched, noting the pleasant ache in my muscles that reminded me of the night before. "Coffee? I'd love some." We moved around my kitchen with surprising ease, like we'd done this dance before. He found mugs while I started the coffee, our bodies brushing casually as we passed. The intimacy of it, this simple domestic moment, felt almost more intense than what we'd shared in bed. "So," I said, leaning against the counter as the coffee brewed, "how long are you staying with Dave?" Something flickered across his face. "Just a few more days, then back to Portland." The reminder hit harder than expected. Of course he was leaving. This had been one night, a beautiful moment, nothing more. I forced a smile, not wanting to seem clingy or create awkwardness. "Well, I'm glad you got to see some of Columbus's hidden treasures." He stepped closer, close enough that I could smell his skin, still carrying traces of my perfume. "Caroline, about that." The sound of a car door slamming in the driveway next door made us both freeze. Dave was home early. "Shit," Luca muttered, running a hand through his hair. "I should go." Panic fluttered in my chest. Not because I was ashamed of what we'd done, but because I suddenly realized I wasn't ready for this to end. Wasn't ready for him to walk out of my life as quickly as he'd entered it. "Will I see you again?" The question slipped out before I could stop it. He cupped my face in his hands, thumb brushing over my cheekbone. "I hope so." I really hope so. The kiss he gave me was soft, lingering, full of unspoken possibilities. Then he was gone, slipping out my back door and across the yard like a secret, leaving me standing in my kitchen with the taste of him still on my lips. I watched from my window as he emerged from Dave's back door minutes later, changed into different clothes, looking like he'd just woken up in the guest room. Dave greeted him with coffee and talk of their plans for the day, completely oblivious to where his houseguest had actually spent the night. The next few days were torture. I caught glimpses of Luca in Dave's yard, helped load his luggage into Dave's car when it was time for him to leave. We managed one moment alone, when Dave went inside to grab something he'd forgotten, and Luca pressed a piece of paper into my hand. "My number," he said quietly, "in case you ever want to show another traveler around Columbus." I clutched the paper like a lifeline, memorizing his face as Dave's car pulled away. That evening, alone in my garden where it all started, I found myself replaying every moment. The way he'd looked at me, touched me, made me feel alive in ways I'd forgotten were possible. It had been reckless, spontaneous, completely unlike my usual careful approach to life, and it had been perfect. I pulled out my phone and stared at his number for a long time before finally typing a message. "Any chance Portland could use someone with a green thumb?" His response came quickly. "Portland could definitely use someone like you. Question is, would Columbus miss you?" I looked around my garden, at the roses I'd spent years cultivating, at the house I'd made into a home. Then I thought about the way Luca had looked at me, like I was an adventure waiting to happen. Maybe it was time for a new kind of growth. "Not if I planted new roots somewhere else," I typed back. The 3 dots indicating he was typing appeared immediately, disappeared, then appeared again. When his message finally came through, it made my heart race. "I know just the place. How do you feel about rain?" I laughed out loud, startling a robin from the nearby fence. "I love the rain." "Perfect. I'll be in Columbus next weekend to help you pack." My phone buzzed again. "Unless you've changed your mind about showing this traveler around." I looked up at my bedroom window, remembering the feel of his hands on my skin, the way he'd whispered my name in the darkness. Some chances were too good to let slip away. "I haven't changed my mind about anything," I replied. As I sat in my garden that night, planning a life I'd never imagined, I couldn't help but smile. Sometimes the most beautiful things grew from the most unexpected seeds. 6 months later, I was tending a new garden in Portland, my hands deep in Oregon soil, when I felt familiar arms wrap around me from behind. Luca's lips found that sensitive spot behind my ear, and I leaned back against him with a contented sigh. "Any regrets?" he murmured. I thought about my old life in Columbus, the safe, predictable routine I'd left behind for this adventure. Then I turned in his arms and kissed him, tasting the promise of all our tomorrows. None at all. Sometimes the best decisions are the ones that scare you most. Have you ever taken a leap of faith that changed everything? What would you have done if you'd been in my garden that day? Played it safe or followed your heart? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one and love hearing your stories. And if this one got you thinking about your own hidden adventures, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss when things get interesting. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Thanks for sharing this journey with me.